Peace and love, this is Brother Faheem, and you are now tuned in to the Lead with Logic podcast. You know the vibes. Peace, 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 peace. Welcome to another episode of the Lead with Logic podcast, and I'm your humble and gracious host, Brother Faheem. Listen, life always moves at an ultramagnetic pace. I try to keep my boots laced so that I can win the race. Man. So much going on in the world. So much to consider. So much to look into. Wow. What is new? They say they go in threes, y'all. They say that it happens in threes. People pass in threes, meaning people die in threes. Whom have we had to get out of here? We've had a few people to get out of here. So we had, first it was Rich Homie Quan. That was who I noticed at first. He was the first one to die. And I'm not necessarily a supporter of Rich Homie Quan to know into the details of his music and his catalog. I wouldn't know about that. However, I respect life, and when people transition, I do take note, right? Or at least I hear about it in the mainstream. So Rich Homie Quan was first. Next, it was James Earl Jones, right? He dies in '93. James Earl Jones was very, very integral in Hollywood. I call him the grandfather of Black Hollywood, right? He's the grandfather. He played Jack Jefferson, who was loosely based on Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight in the 1969 is what I saw. He went on to play King Jaffe Joffer. My son works, right? He played King Jaffe Joffer in Coming to America. And also, he played his most recognizable role would have been the one, the only Darth Vader, the notorious, the illustrious, the infamous Darth Vader. Yeah, he was the voice behind that. And so, yes, you know, he got out of here, and it was tragic. When people start getting out of here, man, you start to realize a few things. It's like, man, I'm getting old, number one, but wow, are we taking, people aren't around. People aren't going to be around forever. And the reality of that is seen when people get out of here, when people die, or when they transition. So my favorite role of James Earl Jones was Claudine. He was Rupert in Claudine. And this is a movie that touches on so many different topics, so many different things. It talks about Black love. That's the overall theme. Black love. It talks about the welfare system and how it stifles family progress. It talks about Black empowerment, Black nationalism, right? Uh, yeah, and it also talked about uh, alcoholism, depression, and it was just wonderful. It was wonderful to watch. It's still one of my favorite uh, movies, and that's the movie more so than anything that I'll remember him for. But nonetheless, after James Earl Jones was Frankie Beverly and Mays. Frankie Beverly passes, and it was like, wow, Frankie Beverly got out of here. That's something else. If you've been to any family reunion, right? If you have been to any homecoming at HBCU, uh, then you know and you appreciate Frankie Beverly and Mays, right? Before I let go, I think Beyonce did a wonderful job of recreating Before I Let Go. I think she did an, a a very very excellent job, excellent job. And so, man, when he passed, it was like, whoa, what's going on here? That was three, right? And that was, he was sick. People had said when they had gone to his uh shows that he was not as he wasn't as engaged, he wasn't as active, right? He wasn't like how he used to be. And of course you kind of expect that, right? Because no one stays the same. Everything diminishes with age, even us, right? We have a shelf life, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. And so Frankie Beverly was no different, but he got out of here. But I really enjoy, I really enjoyed Frankie Beverly, and I was like James Earl Jones, and like Rich Homie Quan. I was like, wow, people are getting out of here now. The person, the next person that I was surprised to have seen got out of here was none other than, I want to say his name properly, so I'm gonna get his name. I want to say his name properly. I want to say it properly. I want to give him uh his name is Tori, Toriano Adaro Tito Jackson. Toriano, that was his name. Toriano Adaro Tito Jackson, American musician, original member of the Jackson Five, who rose to fame in the late 1960s and 70s with the Motown label, and later had continued success with the group on the Epic label in the late 70s. He was born in 1953, Gary, Indiana. September 15th, 2024 was when he died, right? He was left he left three kids behind: TJ Jackson, Taj Jackson, and Terrell Jackson. Terrell, if y'all remember 3T. And of course, we know his siblings: Jackie, Marlon, Jermaine, Randy, Reby, Latoya, Janet, and and lastly Michael. Right? He was Dee Dee, I think was his wife from 72 to 88. Dolores Martez Jackson. And she passed. I think she drowned. It was kind of tragic, right? She drowned. Um, but yeah, I saw that and I thought to myself, wow, this is something. This is this is really this is crazy. You know, in the black community, the Jacksons have a special place in our hearts, right? They have a special place. Um, we feel like we know them because we've over the last what 4 or 5 decades, we've grown up with them, right? Uh, we've had some of the best times to their music, right? Even if you weren't around in the 60s, you can go back and listen. Man, and that music is classic and universal. But uh, man, I remember when Michael died, I was like, wow, this is really the end of an era, man. There's so many emotions and so many uh, memories, maybe not emotions, but memories that are attached to Michael Jackson and the things. And maybe that's just the beauty of music. Maybe music has that effect on people that you remember where you were, what you were doing, who you were with, what you had on when the music is memorable in that way, right? When it's that memorable, that's the effect that it can have. That's the effect that it has on you. And so uh when I found out, when I read Tito died, I was like, wow, this is something else. This is really something else. Tito done got out of here. He was 70 years old. Of course, he lived a great life. He lived an awesome life. Um, he lived a life of 100 men, and he made his impact. He left a legacy with his family, and he left a legacy with the world family. You know, I listened to him, and one thing that the Jacksons said that they prided themselves on was unifying all cultures. Right? They wanted to unify everybody. When you listen to that song, "Can You Feel It?" It kind of shines through in that way, right? It shines through, and you can say, "Yeah, I can see that." And so it made me think deeper because, you know, I tell people on the Lead with Logic podcast, what I do is I say Brother Lee, but it's Brother Faheem, and I'm the maker, the owner, and the sole controller of the Lead with Logic podcast. And what I do is I take the mundane, the controversial, and the sensational, and through literature, books, peer reviewed journals and articles, documentary and documentary clips, I teach critical thought and analytical research so that now you can extract. the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Excuse me, y'all. I'm posted up in a restaurant, so you might hear some pots and pans in the back. Don't worry about that. That's people's orders getting filled. I'm messing with you. But nonetheless, uh, nonetheless, um, yeah, I take the mundane, the controversial, and the sensational, and I now uh, utilize different objective pieces of literature, right? So that we can abstract the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. A lot of topics, a lot of times, when you see something at face value, you might think, that's something I'm not interested, or how does that relate to real life? What is the morale? What is the message that can be conveyed out of that? It's just like when you see a diamond, you just see a lump of coal in its rawest form. But with a little pressure, with a little refinement, it shines and it's something that's very valuable, such as what I do here. Such is what I do here, right? I take those things that might appear to not have a whole bunch of value, but then put a lot of using the resources, put some pressure on it to bring something that is very, very valuable. So when I looked at when I uh considered Tito Jackson, I'm thinking to myself, what is it that Tito brings? It has to be something that Tito brings to the table, right? What is it that Tito brings to the table for Black America, for the world, really, but for Black America as well? What does Tito have to bring to us? What can we take away from Tito's life? What can we learn from Tito, from Tariano Adaro, Tito Jackson? And so, man, I uh I wanted to say this. I wanted to go over this. Tito Jackson, uh, after Michael died, I really got to really listen to another voice because, like the world, we focus so much on the celebrity and the supernova that is Michael that oftentimes we didn't get all of that divine, that right and exact knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that he was surrounded by. Let's not forget, Michael Jackson was not produced in a vacuum. He had a family, he had a support base, he had a support system, right? He was nurtured with love. That was the reason he could do all of those great things. A strong house has to have a strong foundation. His foundation, his family was very strong, and Tito was a part of that. And so, what made uh, 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 what made that foundation different, and what part, what, how did Tito stand out, right? Also, let me say this: if you are on Facebook, if you are on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, please like this, like and send it out to as many people as you can. If you're on Facebook, like and send it out to as many people as you can. If you're on YouTube, same thing. Send the link out to some people. Let's get some people in here. I only got one person now. I'd like to see this. I want to see all of y'all come in and get in on this conversation. This is something that I talked about earlier. And now, if you are in the comments, you can ask whatever questions, and I will absolutely be glad to speak with you. Ice Cold, that's my man. That's my big brother, y'all. Ice, I'm glad you here, bro. I'm glad you here. So, Tito Jackson. How does Tito, since we overshadow, we don't always uh find when the sun shines so bright. Sometimes we can forget that the stars have some shine too, right? And so Tito was definitely a star. He might not have been the supernova that Michael was, but he absolutely was a star. And I'm getting ready to break some stuff down. So where do we start? Let's start at the beginning. So Catherine Scrouse and Joseph Jackson, they meet up. Catherine's from Alabama. Mr. Jackson's from Arkansas. He meets Catherine. They get married, and they then move to Gary, Indiana, and they start having a. They start their family immediately, and it becomes expansive. I heard Joe say they didn't believe in birth control. No, I'm sorry. I heard Miss Jackson say they didn't believe in birth control. So when they start having children, that was it, right? And a lot of times, if you look back in a lot of black families back in the day, in the early days when we were agrarian, when we were people would farm, when we were farming, uh, when we were a more farm, we dealt with manual labor in the farm. We were agrarian. We were agrarian group. Let me say that. Peace, peace. I see you, Keith. Peace, peace. We were more of an agrarian group. We had a lot more children, right? And Joe and Catherine were no different. Make sure y'all share this out. And so they had all these children, right? And Joe was also a musician. You hear Catherine, I heard her talk about, she used to sing too. She sang country music, right? She was a country music singer. If y'all, once y'all, let me say this again. If you go in the comments and you make a comment, you ask a question, I'm reading the comments. I'm definitely going to respond back. Y'all will have chances to say what you want to say, ask what questions you need to ask. But nonetheless, um, so Joe was in a group called the Falcons. He plays the guitar. He plays the guitar in the Falcons. And uh, the thing about Joe Jackson that I think is noteworthy is, Gary, Indiana is in Chicago's backyard. It's a big, a small city, right? It's a little city with a country feel, but it has big city problems, and it's been that way for some years, for some decades, I would say. Um, crime has been bad there ever since the Jacksons were there on 2300 Jackson Street. It was no different. You had issues, and I'm sure they've been exacerbated now after drugs and different economic declines and things like that. But I just mentioned that it was not the easiest place to live, and also it was a steel mill town because in this point in our history, right, in the 40s and 50s, there were a lot of steel towns, right? There were a lot of towns where they had steel mills, and men went and worked in these steel mills. Let me tell you about the conditions in these steel mills. You talking about heat up to 1,000 degrees, right? They had batches of lava, molten rock, heated rock. And Joe worked 2 jobs to support his 10 children. Um, yeah, for 10 years he did. Yeah, Joe was serious. He was serious. He was. And he loved his family. I saw an interview where he said, I didn't make no mistake. I took care of mine. I took care of all of mine. Mine didn't go hungry. All of them was hungry and I fed them. And I stayed with them. He said a lot of people was running out when they had one. I had 10 and I stayed with mine. I had 9, I stayed with mine. So, that was the backdrop of where Joe was, him and his family. And then they lived in I want to say a 2-bedroom, maybe 3-bedroom uh house. I'm thinking it's 2-bedroom house. It was small. It wasn't. They didn't have that many bedrooms to accommodate 9 children. Let me say that. Um, but they had love, right? They might have been broke financially wise, but they weren't poor in spirit. It's a difference. But nonetheless, we all know the story. We know how it goes. He's a member of the Falcons. Not a lot of success, but he was dedicated, and he was a musician, a professional musician. So he goes out and he tells the boys, listen, do not, and I repeat, do not bother with my uh don't bother with my guitar. Don't mess with my equipment while I'm out. Well, one of the young men, it just so happened to be Mr. Tariano, Tito. He loved it much. He did not listen. And we are thankful that he didn't, because after Joe found him out and disciplined in the way that children got disciplined in those days, he said, let me hear what you got. And so as it goes, he was blown away by how good Tito was. And henceforth started the Jackson brothers. They were the Jackson brothers first. Remember, the little two, Marlon and Michael, hadn't joined. And so you got little Michael to the side saying, hey, I want to do it. They're like, no, you're too small. He sings Climb Every Mountain at the school. Now we have the Jackson 5. And so it goes. In Chicago we have the Regal Theater, which is a classic old school theater, and it's really unsung, but it's comparable to the Apollo Theater. The Regal, if you do your research and your knowledge on the Regal Theater was the place to be. It's been a few citadels of black excellence throughout America's conception. It's not always been considered New York or Harlem, right? It's been Bronzeville. It's been in Chicago, right? Chicago was a place that people would come. Of course, Harlem. There were different places where black people would come, or they aspired to go to do for themselves, right? To be themselves and accept their own. And so, uh, if you were an entertainer and you were trying to gain traction in the entertainment industry, in those times, Apollo Theater was absolutely a place. But so was the Regal Theater in Chicago on the South Side. And so the Jacksons, they played the Regal. They played the Apollo, and Diana Ross discovers them. Psych, Diana Ross didn't discover them. Bobby Taylor discovers them, right? And he then gets the word to Gladys Knight, who was then on Motown. Uh, and hence that's how they get they're on the radar, and that's when history is made, right? That's when you got the Jackson Five. Dun, 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 dun. That stuff is still classic. You can watch that stuff today, and children and people will still be rocking out like it was the first time we see them. Welcome, welcome. I appreciate all six of y'all. Make sure y'all share this out because y'all in for a treat. But and please type into the comments, type into the chat. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know what questions you have. Let me know what value. I see you, Free Thinking. I see you, brother. I see you. I see you, man. Thank you for coming. I see you, Free. But and so here we have it. That's my favorite number, 7. So here we have it. They're on Motown, right? And hey, who is one of the guitar players? Jermaine is the bass player, but then you have Tito. He's the other player, right? On all those great riffs. All those great riffs are played by none other than Tito Jackson and Jermaine. But Tito, for the sake of what we're talking about, for the sake of our discussion, and for number one hits, man, I mean, they had an illustrious career. I don't have to tell y'all about the Jacksons. We all know. We should know anyway. But they leave Motown eventually, and they break away and they go to Epic. And man, you know, they they just reached such high heights. They soared, and it was crazy. It was crazy because the thing about the Jacksons that I noticed was whenever we deal with the Jacksons, we never do consider uh, all of them, right? We don't look at the conglomerate or the collective. We just look at Michael, and I get it because he was a supernova, right? It's hard to now focus on stars when the sun is shining so bright, but they're still there and they're still shining, like I said. But I always say this was the hierarchy, not even the hierarchy. This is how I categorize the musical talent with the Jacksons. So now remember, now you had Marlon, you had Randy, you had Reby, you had Latoya. They all had music, y'all. If y'all go back, Reby had a song called Centipede that Michael wrote. Centipede. And it was pretty popular, right? For all of my 50 plus year olds, my 80s high school cats, y'all know about Centipede. Y'all know about Centipede. But and then Latoya had, she had a Diddy Bop. Uh and I think I wanted Marlon had his, Uh but here go, it was three Jacksons that I recall who really took it a cut above the rest. If this were the universe, the rest of them kind of stayed on the ground, but these went up into the stratosphere, right? So first is Jermaine. Jermaine, the first single I remember of Jermaine was Daddy's Home. If y'all go back to Baby Boy and you watch, it's a scene where Tyrese or Jody, he wakes up and he smells breakfast cooking. and you hear, "You're my love, you're my angel, you're the girl of my dreams." That's Jermaine Jackson. And he goes into the kitchen to find Ving Rhames, to see Ving Rhames nude and naked, right? That was Jermaine Jackson. That was Jermaine Jackson. And so, um, hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty. But no, drinking that Kool-Aid, drinking the Kool-Aid free. You want something? That was Daddy's Home by Jermaine Jackson playing in the background. The next song moving forward was he had a song called Don't Be Sad, Don't Be Blue. You've got your whole life for that was my joint. I was a young boy, but I used to love that song. Don't take it personal. That was Jermaine Jackson. Y'all go check that out. And then he had a another joint. These were his more famous joints, right? But he had another track with Iman, the African model Iman. She was in Michael and Jermaine's video. But why don't you do what you did? That was Jermaine Jackson. I can't think of the name, but if you type in Jermaine Jackson, it'll come up. Just type in Jermaine Jackson with Iman in YouTube, and the video will pop right up. So Jermaine had moderate success. Then you know who's next, Janet, right? Janet comes into the act in Las Vegas because the Jacksons had a fees. I see you real. The Jacksons had a residency or a show at least, right? Joe had hooked up a show, and so Janet got into the act. She was doing uh May West. She was doing Sonny and Cher, right? She was doing a lot of stuff. She was dancing, all that stuff. Welcome, y'all. Y'all, please comment in the comments and I'll respond. I'm looking at the comments right now. But she then went on to be Penny in Good Times, right? Then she went from Good Times to being Charlene in Different Strokes. Then she went from being Charlene to a role in Fame, right? She was in Fame with Debbie Allen and Leroy. um, and then she did some movies, Poetic Justice. Why Did I Get Married? You know, um, she's had a very illustrious career, right? Separate from her family. Uh, but her album, she had an album before Control, but Control was the one that put her on my radar, at least back in the day, because you had what Control, the title track. You had When I Think of You, which was a nice little ditty bop, and then you had Pleasure Principle, was she was dancing, and we got to see how thick she was. And my favorite was Funny How Time Flies, right? That was the jam. That was my joint. That was my track. And so uh and then she had Rhythm Nation, she had Janet, she had so many other classic hits and classic albums. Minus, and then of course she did Scream with Michael uh in 95. But nonetheless, um yeah. So then there's Janet. She's up there. I would say if Michael hadn't have been the king of pop and the king of the 80s, then Janet absolutely would have been the most prominent and dominant Jackson. But then we have to go up to Michael, he's in a whole nother galaxy. He's in a whole nother galaxy, right? I don't have to go, I'm not gonna run down Michael's uh resume because we all know it. We all know it. I will say this. I think that people um records are meant to be broken. They are. I just think that a lot of times they're forcing a lot of these new age singers, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Chris Brown. These are not accurate comparisons, nor do they hold the cultural impact that Michael Jackson held, right? We can point to other people who are like the Chris Browns, who are like the Beyonce, who are like Taylor Swift, You can't point to another Michael Jackson because he usurped Elvis Presley. He usurped the Beatles. He usurped just about everybody. He's by himself. But with that came, and y'all follow me because this is all relative to where I'm going, right? With that came a lot of unjust and unwarranted criticism. A whole lot. Number one, the whole vitiligo thing, right? There have been doctors that have come out and said Mike actually had vitiligo. That's the skin pigmentation disease when you are heavily melanated and then you begin to now lose your melanin and you see the white splotches. A lot of what Mike was doing that we received or that we looked at as style was really medical. The glove. He said he was beginning to show the symptoms of vitiligo. That's why he wore the glove, right? To cover that up. You see? Um, so yeah, people say things. The next thing people ridiculed Mike about was his face, right? His face. Primarily his nose and his chin. Because when you look at the off the wall, or even the Wiz Michael, he had a nose. He had a large, a more pronounced nose. But then by the time you get to Thriller, he had a smaller nose, right? And then his chin, it was a cleft added to it, right? It was a cleft added to his chin. And so people were always, they said he wanted to be white and that he hated the way he looked, right? And it even shows some of that in American Dream, right? I would say, what child doesn't like when they have acne? If you've ever been a teenager and you had oily skin and you had, they said, crater face, coffee cake face, all of these things that people are cruel, you feel some kind of way about that. And Mike was no different. But I would point to other stars like Rocky Balboa, i.e., Sylvester Stallone. When you watch Rocky Part 1 and Rocky Part 3, you don't just see a different build of man, you see a totally different face. It's contoured and it's constructed totally different, right? Joan Rivers, she's a person who messed with her face, right? A lot of these people, Jennifer Aniston, Vivica Fox, Jada Pinkett. There are a lot of people in Hollywood who, in order to stay young looking, they manipulate their face. Michael Jackson was not, he wasn't different in that way. Yeah, his nose looked like it had been shaved down. But watch this. All of the Jacksons looked like they had their faces altered. Go look at them. Go look at how they looked in the early 70s as opposed to how they look today. That is, I wouldn't say that that's a man. I mean, we could get deep on that, but I wouldn't necessarily say a person in show business that is a sign that denotes self-hatred. Because watch this. Beyonce she started to look different. She started to have blonde hair when she left Destiny's Child, right? Mary J. Blige has blonde hair. A lot of these people want, when they're celebrities, they sell a look, they sell a brand, they want to appeal and they want to look a certain way. Is it always right? No, but let's not alienate Mike and say he was something totally the more different when he did it. Um, and lastly, um, follow me, follow me, follow me. Lastly, they said that Mike was they always emphasize, they use Mike. Have y'all noticed this? And you can put it in the chat. They use Mike to degrade Joe. They use Mike to degrade his father, right? Now, now, um, we've seen, I think the big interview that people always mention is the Martin Bashir interview, right? Where he said, you know, I when I see my father, I would vomit. Well, here's the backstory to that whole interview process. Mike was approached by Martin Bashir and his team. Hey, we want to interview you. You know, Michael Jackson in the 80s, Tito said this, right? Tito said Mike didn't like doing interviews because a lot of the media hadn't done him right, right? They hadn't treated him properly, and he didn't like that. And also, we found out that he wanted to be mysterious because it would also increase people's demand to see him, and it worked. But nonetheless, Princess Diana had vouched for Martin Bashir, right? And so he said, okay, I'll do it. This is his bodyguard talking, Mike's former bodyguard. He said, well, everything was going good, but then he started acting weirdly. He started acting differently. Martin Bashir, he started asking a line of questions that had not been agreed to. But see, Michael was a shrewd businessman. Of course, the man who bought the Beatles, that brought the Beatles catalog. Excuse me, y'all. People are taking orders. People are going to the leave with logic7.com and purchasing gear. Right? That's what people are doing, y'all. That's the ding you hear if you hear it. Um, yeah, so people are he was like, man, I don't want to do this. Well, when he started asking these questions and being weird, Mike is like, whoa. But Mike was shrewd. He was shrewd. And he had a different set of cameras. He had his own set of cameras to record, right? So now, just in case this guy gets bizarre and weird, and he in fact did, Mike could have something that he could show. The full this is the full footage. This is everything unmolested, unfiltered, uncut. This is it. So it comes out and it's released, and of course, it's chopped up, and it's really nothing that Mike agreed to. And so the big thing was it really attacked Joe Jackson. It really attacked Joe Jackson. Y'all follow me? You know, when they attack Joe Jackson, what they're really doing is they're attacking black fatherhood. They're attacking black masculinity manifested, right? Through the means of fatherhood. Because see, a lot of accusations have been made about Joe Jackson. There was a song in the 80s called Look at All These Rumors, right? And it was just that, rumors. You know, brothers and sisters, you should never, you should never, ever, on a mere accusation or a claim, rush to judgment, right? Y'all got to forgive me. You should never rush to judgment behind an unverified, uninvestigated accusation or a claim. For my brothers and sisters who do that, you can't now say you support Emmett Till because that was an accusation made that got him killed, right? When you now join in on the accusations and the claims, you become just as guilty as those people who killed our brothers and sisters behind accusations and claims. Don't do that. Don't do it. Never do that. Never let your emotions supersede your logic. Never. Because when you do, people get hurt. And we have emotions every single day, but you got to learn how to mitigate them. So, a lot of accusations about Joe, a lot of accusations. And it's not just Joe Jackson, y'all. Watch this. We can talk about other black fathers that catch hell. I'm going to name some names, and y'all can put it in the chat. The 8 people that's in here. I appreciate y'all. Richard Williams, Venus and Serena's father, right? They talk crazy about that man, right? LeVar Ball. LeVar Ball. Y'all remember him? Big bad, big baller brand. I love LeVar Ball. So boisterous, so confident, so cocky, and did it his own way. LeVar Ball, right? Who's another one? Floyd Mayweather's father. You know, they've downgraded, even though Floyd, we know Floyd and Floyd Jr., Floyd Sr. had back and forth. But my point is, they have taken the image of a black father and diminished it. They've made it monstrous and they vilified it. And it was no worse than done. It was no worse done than that was done with Joe Jackson. And guess what? Black people, we fed into the foolishness. A lot of us fed into the foolishness. We did. I remember hearing, I was a young boy. I remember hearing he raped Latoya. Y'all remember that? They said that Joe raped his daughter, right? They said he was sleeping with a few of them, right? He's bringing women around the house, this, that, and the third. Now, we understand that Joe does have a child outside of him and Catherine. That's their business, though. That's their business. That's not for me to judge, right? Because a lot of times what we'll do is when we are unaware of all the facts and we are just making assumptions and contemplating without any real sound evidence, again we slip up and we folly, right? We find ourselves in error. What did homegirl say in Poetic Justice? When you assume, you make an ass out of you, not me. So people assume a lot about Mr. Jackson, and the media, which we don't control, fuels it, add, adds fuel to the fire, right? They fan it, and we just soak it in. We soak it in, right? We soak it in. Now, the Jacksons, I'm gonna tell y'all about them people. I'm gonna tell y'all about that group, our brothers and sisters that are the Jacksons. You notice whenever something comes up about one of them in the news, if they're ever being interviewed, y'all watch close. They not gonna say nothing bad about their brother and sister. They not gonna say nothing bad publicly about their brother and sister. They not. They're not gonna do it. They're not gonna. They're not gonna allow you to manipulate them against their family. They're not gonna do it. That's what I've observed from them. Right. That's what I've watched them do through the years. When they've said negative stuff, hey Michael, hey man, we're not gonna talk about that. We're not gonna do that. We're not doing that. We are not doing that. That's my brother and I love him. And we're gonna leave it at that. There was only one. There was only one. When Michael was accused, remember, Latoya came out against Michael. You remember that? She came out against him. She said, Michael, I can no longer stand by and watch this. And she was reading something. And it came out that her husband was controlling her. Latoya was also the only one that had a Playboy spread. Do y'all remember that? Latoya had a Playboy spread. She had a Playboy spread. She was the only one to have that. Latoya was. And you have to wonder, that is outside of the normal characteristics of the Jacksons. We don't know them to get into things like this. I'm mentioning this for a reason. It then came out that she was now being controlled, manipulated, and used to bring her family down. She was. Now, why is that relevant? When Michael died, when Michael died, we saw something of somewhat of the opposite. And you know what? I would like to I would like to share something with you guys, right? I want to share something with you guys real quick. Real quick. Let me share this. This is what I respect. And this is why this is what I thought about when when Tito passed, right? This my mind would immediately to this. It immediately went to this. So y'all sit tight. I'm queuing it up on the monitor. And here we go.
People have an assessment of the way that you were raised. It's in the news, like people talk about, Joe and how he raised you. Did you feel any level of resentment? Did you think that was unnecessary or just what you needed?
What I say about that is people can say what they want. I know my lifestyle. I respect people. People respect me. And my father was strict, but he had his reasons. You didn't
think that those reasons were unreasonable.
Oh no. I mean, come on, we're all black in here, just about.
And so just about. That's what you think.
Everybody except the white dude right there. He looks like a manager.
Now, come on, we know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Our parents didn't spare the rod, man.
Right.
You did something wrong, you were scared to go home.
Right.
So that's just the way it was.
And that's I always thought, like, look, I can't. That man, I wasn't in that household, but I can say this: your name is written in the stars, and you have to have, to some degree, some level of appreciation for what got you there.
Absolutely.
So totally. you were appreciative of it.
Oh man, I've always said way back in the day that I think that my father did a fantastic job. I think he's one of the greatest men. And today a lot of men need to learn from him.
I think so too.
Yeah, because
no, I didn't
grow. Yeah, that's not it though. We have more. That is not it. But I like what he shared there. I thought that was befitting, and that was the only thing that I had ever seen him, or the only way I've ever seen Tito and all of the brothers, other than Michael, and even Michael went back on what he said when he went over to London. He went over to Oxford and made the speech, and he talked about how he was sure that his father loved him because of the way that he treated him and different things that he did, and he had never considered certain things, right? So I also want y'all to check this out.
Marley, you missed a turn again.
I was trying.
He's singing out of tune, throwing everything off.
How are we going to ever get anywhere like this?
My service is getting nervous, y'all. My service is getting nervous. But it'll come back up. This is both Tito and Jackie talking about Joe and how they absolutely had normal childhoods, and that he was portrayed in a certain way. Joe was portrayed in a certain fashion. Yeah, he was portrayed in a certain fashion. I'm trying to get you all to see. Y'all hold on now. Hold on with me. When y'all TV go out, y'all stay right there. When them Super Bowl commercials get to freezing, y'all ain't going nowhere. Y'all want to see them commercials. So hold on, it's coming back. We're going to come back to you. We're going to get it right back.
Do it better than you guys.
Stop trying to sell your courses or coaching.
Technical difficulties. All right, here we go.
You don't listen. Marlon, outside. Go. Get a switch.
I was doing it, honest. I was.
You start whining before you get the switch. You stop it. Be a man. Go.
No, I think from the American Dream that they put my father out like he was a bad guy, and I just don't like the way they portrayed him a little bit in that American Dream story. He wasn't like that. And don't forget, like he did beat our butts when we did something wrong, and that's what all parents did back in the day. But he wasn't like that. Yeah, he wanted us to make it. He bought us instruments. He rehearsed us, and he saw the dream for us, and I'm glad he did that for us.
Well, like I've always said, people don't realize that your childhood is just a small part of your life. Most of your life, if not all of your practically, is your adulthood. So I always felt my parents, especially my father, raised his sons to be men at early age because he knew we have to be men for the rest of our life. And people asked me, did you miss anything in your childhood? To be honest, I don't think so. I got to play a little baseball, a little this, play slide down the hills. It was fun. But playing this music when I was a kid was a whole lot more fun.
From 50,000 people is a lot of fun.
More fun, and I'm still having fun with it today.
Yeah.
And that's what my father knew.
Yeah. That was what I thought about immediately when I got the news that Tito had passed, right? I thought immediately about Black fatherhood, the plight of a Black father, the sacrifices that a Black father has to make, and how the media now diminishes that plight and tries to vilify and make Black masculinity somewhat of something psychotic, something perverse, and it's just not so. And they love to do that because really it was a little bit of resentment, right? Because the Jacksons was loved past the United States. More than just the American people loved the Jacksons. The world community loved the Jacksons. And that's part and due to Miss Catherine Jackson, but a lot laid on Mr. Joe Jackson himself. When people ask me now, who's your favorite Jackson? It's Joe. Without Joe Jackson, there is no Michael Jackson. There is no Janet. There is no Jermaine. There's no Tito, Jackie, Marlon, Rebe, Latoya, Janet, Randy. They don't exist. The great times, the great music, the joyful and joyous feelings that we heard, right? The reason why we love the Jacksons, right? The reason why we love them because of the way their music makes us feel. That was largely in part to Mr. Joe Jackson pushing his family, raising them from poverty and squalor. But many of us, we don't have the wherewithal. We don't have the wherewithal to appreciate that, right? Some of us are going to be blinded. Some of us are so resentful. Some of us don't have uh, the critical thought process to say, you know what? I'm delaying any type of judgment on anybody until I know all the facts. That's what this is really about. It's nearly not about Tito. It's about the prosecution or the persecution, the unjust persecution of the Black man, the Black father. And Joe Jackson was merely a pawn in that. He was the most visible. He was the most visible pawn. He was the most visible pawn in it. Right? And so uh and so man, I that is Tito's legacy. He was a man who countered that negative framework or that negative rhetoric that was put out about Mr. Joe Jackson. Because again, when you see these high profile, these highly accessible celebrity and their parents, when they are pigeonholed into a certain persona, that now spills over and bleeds over into the collective, right? And here today now, there is, there's a clear attack on masculinity. It's a clear attack on it. Everything is geared. This is the, what do they call it? The age of Aquarius, meaning that it's almost a crime. It's almost somewhat of a sin to demonstrate masculine divinity. At least in the mainstream, it is. Right? The world is all messed up. But now I want to give you guys real quick. I want to show y'all something. This is not another. Well, you know what? Yes, it is. Let me. You know what? I'm gonna pull that back up. But I want to show y'all a study, something that I found that I think is very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's a study, right? It's a study. Black dads. Black dads more involved in children's lives than other groups. Right? Black dads. I see you. I see you, my man. I think that's my man Jada now. I think that's who that is. I want to say that's who that is. Long time no see, brother, but I appreciate you coming through. I appreciate the four of y'all rocking out with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm gonna go over this and then one more thing, and then we're gonna shut this thing down. So this is local news. This is from Miami, CBS News. Local news study: Black dads more involved in children's lives than other groups. Members of Congress joined a policy meeting to tackle negative stereotypes of Black fathers. U.S. House of Representatives member Frederica. This was a few years back, by the way. This is nothing recent, but it was a few years. I think it was last year. I want to say it was 2023. U.S. House of Representatives member Frederica Wilson of Florida's 24th District organized it with support from the Omega Psi Phi. That's the Qs, right? I'm not a Q, y'all. I'm not trying to, box with no Qs. But and researchers involved in 2013 Center for Disease Control study found that Black fathers more involved in their children's lives compared to other racial groups. Think about how this group was dogged by the school to prison pipeline, mass incarceration, health disparities, and continuing to shoulder the gun violence epidemic spends more time with their children than others. Rep Wilson said. Corey G. Patterson is a certified public accountant and partner in Broward County firm. He holds 2 college degrees and professional certifications. Thanks to his 4-year-old fishing buddy, though, Patterson has a more defining label. I think the best thing and the best title I've ever had is the title of being a father, Patterson said. It feels like you get the opportunity to go in a time machine and give all the lessons that you learned throughout your life to a younger version of yourself. Absolutely. He takes his son Cole he wakes his son Cole up at 6:30 every morning with the theme song of the cartoon DuckTales just to see the child start his day with happiness. Patterson and his wife also structured their schedules around Cole's youth basketball practices and games. When I kind of go through my day and I'm explaining the things I do with my son, people look at me like, really, Patterson said, you're doing that? It is a question the CDC researched last decade. Still, a narrative suggesting Black fathers are less than most involved in their children's lives persists enough for Rhett Wilson to call a policy meeting to the U.S. Capitol last week. It is very disingenuous the way they are perceived and stereotyped across the nation. Pause. We talking about Black fathers. The representative said, it is very disingenuous the way they are perceived and stereotyped across the nation. Rep Wilson said, it's time to amplify this message. The Congressional Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys plans to produce research that attacks disparities and misconceptions. They hope organizations in Miami and other communities use their platforms to bring attention to harm stereotypes bring. Between trips to parks and story time every night with his son Cole, Patterson is an advocate for the Fatherhood Task Force of South Florida, a group, that supports, trains, teaches, and workshops with dads around Miami. That is an excellent idea. I think that false narrative it's discouraging to young fathers, Patterson said. If you see other fathers be engaged, sometimes that gives you ideas on how to be engaged. If you see other fathers getting involved, reading to their children, that lets you know, okay, this is something that I can do. So, yeah. It said it is very disingenuous the way they are perceived and stereotyped across the nation. Rep Wilson said it's time to amplify this message. The Congressional Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys plans to produce research that attacks disparities and misconceptions. They hope organizations in Miami and other communities use their platform to bring attention to harm stereotypes bring. I think that sums up how I felt about Tito Jackson. You know, he always attacked the myth that his father was a villain and a monster. And he always gave him humility, right? And I love to do that because I'm gonna tell y'all, we don't oftentimes what's going on, what's going on, Fika. Y'all check it out. I appreciate you. We don't oftentimes, as a parent, not just as a father, a mother or a father, and sometimes we don't come from homes with a strong mother and father. Sometimes we come from a broken home. So, with that in mind, we have to understand this is something that we're doing on the fly, right? This is something that we're doing our best. Those of us that are trying. And I think that, no, I know that Mr. Joe Jackson was a man who was very involved, who loved and cared for his children. Was he stern? Absolutely. Maybe did he do some things that I wouldn't have done? Absolutely. But we can never take away that it took a strong man with vision and belief in himself and his children to produce what he did, to produce and get his family and to bring them from 2300 Jackson Street all the way into the pantheons of legendary status in music. That was Mr. Joe Jackson. And Tito was one of the best representatives of that. And I love Tito for that. Every time he spoke about his dad, it was nothing but love, respect, and admiration. And I can only hope that when I leave here, my children will talk about me in the same way, right? Because Joe was a man's man. He was a man's man, y'all. And Tito reflected that. Your legacy, right? Your impact will be seen and manifested through your children. How many of you are creating legendary children? Raise your hand. Comment. Make some noise. So, man, listen, I really appreciate y'all coming and listen, man. And I want y'all to do something. I want y'all to go to the store, get to the movement, get behind the movement, right? Lead with logic. And lead with logic is an acronym, y'all. I don't know if I told y'all. Lead with logic stands for this, right? Each letter stands for this. Letting enlightenment and divinity win in this harsh level of God's infinite creation. Lead with logic. Letting enlightenment and divinity win in this harsh level of God's infinite creation. Lead with logic. I want y'all to get y'all some gears getting cold. I know y'all believe in intelligence because y'all are intelligent people. I know y'all believe in divinity because y'all are divine people. Right? So, Fika, tell my big brother he need to go on and send me that. And he know what I'm talking about. Tell him I'm waiting. Tell him I'm waiting, Fika. Tell him he need to put that in the mail so that we can do that. It's good to see you, Jay, my man. Okay, cool, real, free thinking, and everybody else that's watching now and that's gonna watch in the future. Listen. Stay tuned. I know I've been doing a lot of lives on Mondays. I got to get back to putting my shorts out there, and so that y'all can watch the build up and watch what I'm doing, and continue to support. Y'all can catch me on Fanbase too. If you're not on Fanbase and you're a content creator, go on over to Fanbase. It's an app created by Isaac Hayes. I want to say the third. It's a black-owned app, and what he does is he gives people the opportunity to make money and make revenue on loves. I see you, Free. Yeah, you get loves. You can support people with loves, and it's wonderful. It's brilliant. Because if you are a consistent content creator and you have an audience and you are adding value to the broader community, to a community, you can get paid for your efforts, right? You can put some muscle behind that hustle, right? So yeah, going over to Fanbase, y'all. Check it out, download it, create you a page, I'm Lee with Logic 7 over there. So if you want to come in, sometimes I pop in over there and do some things. And yeah, but listen, man. Look, I'm so glad that y'all came. I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all have a most positive, productive, and peaceful rest of your week. And may, like Minister Malcolm said, may we all meet again in the light of understanding.